Thank you. All right, good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Land Committee of North Norfolk District Council on Thursday, 4th of April 2024. I'm Councillor Paul Heinrich and I'm chairing the meeting this morning. For those of you who have not attended one of these meetings before, officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit either side of me at the top table. In front of me in the central area sit members of the committee who will be making decisions on the items on the agenda. Can officers please introduce themselves? Good morning, my name is Jeff Lyon, I'm the Development Manager.
Good morning, I'm Joseph Barrow, Senior Planning Officer.
Lauren Gregory, Democratic Services.
Morning, I'm Olivia, I'm Senior Planning Officer.
Good morning, Colin Rubin, Team Leader in Planning.
Russell Williams, Assistant Director for Planning.
Fiona Croxton, Solicitor to the Council.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome members of the public in attendance and those who are viewing this meeting remotely. The members of the public who've registered to speak, I will call you to the front to the microphone at the end when it is your turn. Usual notices, we're not expecting a fire alarm drill today, so if the alarm does sound, it is for real. In which case, please follow the officers using the marked exits and make your way to the car park at the front of the building or the flagpole to the rear. Do not use the lift, of course. If you could please turn mobile phones off or to silent. We will take a short break at about 11, or depending on how long the first item takes between the two items on the agenda today. I don't expect to be running into lunch. I hope. It has been known. And the toilets are probably out in the foyer, of course. Okay, Lauren, do we have apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Rory MacDonald, Councillor Gerard Mancini-Boyle and Councillor Adam Varley. And if I may, with the next item, Chairman, Councillor Jill Boyle, Councillor Luke Patterson and Councillor Liz Withington are present for the aforementioned members respectively.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, the 7th of March, 2024. Are there any amendments, alterations, corrections? Can you recall those of the true record, please? Present at that meeting, of course. Thank you. I have no items of urgent business.
None received.
Thank you. The order of business will be as on your papers. Item 7 then, declarations of interest. Yes, Holiday.
I'll be abstaining from item 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, we now move straight to the meat of the meeting. Item 8, Catfield. You recall this was deferred previous meeting for further consultations with the Parish Council and local members, which has indeed taken place, and you will have received a report from the Parish Council and a counter report from the agent. Okay, Dr. Barrow.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, councillors. Yes, as you've said, this item was deferred at the last meeting with extra consultation required, and we now return to you with that consultation indeed required. To refresh everyone's memory and for those members that weren't in fact there at that meeting, this is the proposed conversion of the former Milestones Hospital in Catfield to a residential development consisting of 21 dwelling houses and internal renovation works throughout with a small extensions to the rear of one of the buildings. So the breakdown of accommodation is 12 one-bed, 12 one-bed units and 9 two-bed units. There is landscaping across the site to be agreed by a condition, as well as conditions that you will notice towards the rear of the officer report. Provision of 32 parking spaces and turning areas, ecological enhancements and various financial contributions to be secured through Section 106 agreement towards GRAM's open space provision and other local infrastructure. So looking at the approximate site location here, you'll see that it is sort of towards the north end of Catfield. Looking more in detail here, it's to the west side of the street opposite a more industrial area and to the north of the more residential part of the village of Catfield. You'll see on the left-hand side of this slide, the development consists of 2 buildings total, Hamilton House and Magnolia House connected to the north of the site, and Hamilton Mews in the southwest corner. So the key features that you'll notice from the site plan include the 32 spaces with 4 accessible and 6 electric vehicle charging spaces. The green space is to largely be retained to the front of Hamilton Mews, as well as the provision of a children's play area in grey. And soakaway and drainage connections are also detailed, and those are the blue lines on the plan that you see on the screen in front of you. So looking at the existing elevations here of the larger building to the north, and the proposed elevations, and you'll note that the changes are relatively minor and mostly consist of fenestration alterations to this building. The existing floor plans here of that building, followed by the proposed ground floor plans, which you'll notice 3 1-bed units, 6 2-bed units, and a bin store with a 22-space bike rack at that level. The first floor plan with 1 1-bed unit and 2 2-bed units, and a further 2-bed unit at second floor level, sorry. And here are some photos from within the site of that building. Moving on to the Hamilton Mews building, you'll notice the existing elevations, and the proposed elevations, you'll notice 2 symmetrical rear extensions there, which serve each of the flats at that level. The existing floor plans and the proposed floor plans, again, those extensions are clear in orange and blue to the top of each of those elevations, each of those plans, sorry. Again, further photos of this portion of the site as well. So the key issues for consideration by members today will be the principle of the conversion of the building and the loss of the hospital facility. The level of affordable housing provision at the moment, that is no affordable housing provision as verified by an independent viability assessor. Design, inclusive of those elements you'll see there, and amenity impacts, flood risk and drainage, highway safety and car parking, ecological and biodiversity concerns, as well as heritage concerns, sustainable construction and planning obligations and financial contributions. The recommendation in front of you today, members, is approval of the application subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement for the financial contributions outlined in the officer report, and the imposition of conditions as well outlined in the officer report, with final wording of those conditions to be delegated to the Assistant Director for Planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go to the first speaker, Tim Harris, Catfield Parish Council. Come to the microphone, please.
So give me the starter's pistol, do you? Tell me when you start. Okay, you're starting the timing. Okay, Catfield Parish Council is unanimously against this flawed development, not just because it encourages the closure of a much-needed mental hospital, but also because it drives a coach and horses through the council's own planning policies. What really is the point of having them if they can be simply ignored to enable a financially flawed project? The justification for the loss of the hospital is not just contrary to policy, which requires 12 months marketing, but is against all common sense. Who could think that the 3 months alleged promotion in the middle of COVID represents anything other than going through the motions? And there is no evidence that the facility was promoted to other C2 band users like residential care homes. One can hardly open the EDP today without evidence of the growing demand for proper mental health facilities, that even hotel conversions are being considered. NHS statistics show that up to 120 patients are currently outsourced every month from East Anglia to facilities as far away as Wales. The hospitals closed with the loss of 36 jobs because it failed a care quality audit, not for financial reasons. It is clear there was no real attempt to sell the hospital for the purpose for which it was designed, and that housing has probably been on the agenda from the start. The officer's report recognises that development density is a critical issue and acknowledges that the proposed 50 dwellings per hectare exceeds the policy target by some margin. Actually, it's 67%, which any objective observer, but apparently not the developer, will conclude was a major excess. Yet the officer's report says this is acceptable if it is not resulting in adverse impacts. Clearly, they're using this as a figure of speech and have not done the simple arithmetic, which shows that if every inhabitant had a car, there would be a requirement for 59 spaces against the 31 envisaged. Parking will inevitably overflow onto the main Ludham roads, causing congestion and danger to pedestrians because there are no pavements. There is a further major breach in policy, and the development will provide no affordable housing, whereas all 10 of the comparator developments in the feasibility study do. The officer's report concludes that the 21 dwellings would provide a modest but welcome contribution to housing supply and would help support existing local services and make a moderate contribution to construction. The last two unexplained, unserious throwaways. More serious is the only breach of policy referred to in the officer's conclusion is the failure to market the facility properly as a hospital. The other major breaches are simply ignored. As elected representatives of the people of North Norfolk, you might reflect on whether you wish to be associated with the closure of a much-needed mental hospital, what is essentially a false prospectus. Catfield's 15-page report shows that the proposal as presented is both factually and legally flawed and as such open to challenge. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of my 3 minutes. Thank you. I hope I completed in time.
Thank you. Would you like to return to your seat? I have no objecting speaker. I have one supporting speaker, Mr. Ben Edwards, agent for the applicant.
Good morning, committee members. I'd like to use my 3 minutes to discuss two items: affordable housing and the sale of milestones. Policy HO2 covering affordable housing states planning permission for the erection of new dwellings or the conversion of existing dwellings will be permitted, provided that where it is viable to do so, the scheme provides affordable housing for the following. The policy then goes on to set out scales, densities, and the affordable housing percentages associated. But built within the wording, where it is viable to do so, is an understanding that not all development is suitable for affordable housing. If a developer has paid a premium for land or an existing building requiring millions of pounds worth of conversion costs, the policy recognises this and offers an alternative. A financial viability assessment has been provided and is backed by the council's independent viability assessor. The applicant's contributions are set out in the officer's report, which will be secured via a Section 106 agreement. We believe we're in full compliance with Policy HO2. On the sale of milestones, the Parish Council quote policy CT3 covering the provision and retention of local services and facilities, which states, development proposals that result in the loss of sites or premises currently or last used for important local facilities and services will not be permitted. Luckily, CT3 defines important local facilities and services for us as primary schools, convenience stores, banks, post offices, public house, petrol stations, public hall, indoor sports facilities, theatres, cinemas, and other cultural facilities. And listed last, small-scale healthcare facilities, where the facility is within the countryside or is the last of its kind within a principal secondary settlement or service village. Within the committee packs you received, you'll find a map of Catfield. That map, drawn in December 2021 and predates our planning application, has a green area marked Cat 1. This zone includes milestones and the dwellings to the north, which have been added to Catfield settlement boundary. Milestones is no longer in the countryside, and the requirement to advertise under policy CT3 is seriously brought into question. This, coupled with similar rehabilitation services for drug and alcohol patients being provided in Munsley, a service village, and within North Norfolk, further lessen that requirement. The former milestone site has been confirmed to be outside the nutrient neutrality catchment zone. It's brownfield and is now within the settlement boundary, and it has been unused for over 3 years. North Norfolk District Council are currently unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, and the approval of that application would contribute towards those targets. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to local members. You have 5 minutes each. Which of you wishes to start?
I will start, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much. Just as a foreword, everyone, I'm not in the best of health today, so there might be a few coughs mid-speech, so I do apologise about that ahead of time. So first off, I would just like to express my dissatisfaction again over communication with residents in Catfield on this application. I'm sure you've all seen the document sent through to NNDC by the applicant's architect responding to the points raised by Catfield Parish Council. And I was really shocked to learn this morning that although circulated to members of the council, this has not been uploaded to the public planning portal. No one from Catfield Village would have been able to see this, review this, read the content of this. So again, this raises concerns over communication between the district council and my residents in Catfield. Very simply, why was this not done? Shouldn't all responses and documents be publicly available ahead of a development committee meeting? So now I will speak on the content of the application, and really I would like to focus my thoughts on the loss of facility that this application would cause should it be approved today. The advertising period is put in place by North Norfolk District Council for a reason, and that is to ensure that local facilities such as Milestones Hospital are protected and secured for the health and well-being of our North Norfolk communities. To learn that this site was advertised for only 3 months during a COVID lockdown does not fill me with confidence that that health or social care need has been properly examined or explored. Indeed, I was recently sent through statistics which show just how high the need is for mental health facilities in our Broadland corner of North Norfolk. The Stalham area has one of the highest referral rates to mental health services of anywhere in the district, and this type of facility is needed locally to ensure our communities have the support they need and that people can access important healthcare provision without having to travel miles out of the county. And I will at this point just make reference to the comments made by the applicant's architect that yes, although there is a facility in Munsley, we are still seeing hundreds of people being outsourced to other places around the country every single month. So if we can secure local services, in my opinion, that is of benefit. Indeed, the Eastern Daily Press recently reported on the story of a hotel in Watton, which has been granted approval to be converted into a mental health facility. In comparison, approval of this application, in my opinion, would seem like a retrograde step. We need to be encouraging the expansion of local healthcare provision, not removing it. And I'm concerned that this important aspect of the application has not been considered as thoroughly as it should have been. And therefore, I am advocating for a refusal. This, alongside the loss of employment opportunities, the significant increase in density, and the absence of affordable housing from the application, in my mind, leads to a negative balance. I know we need housing in North Norfolk. As the youngest councillor in the district, I know and feel that more than most. But I'm also acutely aware of just how much we need to protect important community assets, which Milestones could very easily be, as we have the oldest average demographic of any district in the entire country. I hope today that you, as my fellow councillors, will come down on the side of ensuring our communities have the chance to protect the healthcare facilities that they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bowes.
Good morning. I'm here to support the parish of Catfield today as their district councillor and support the concerns that the chair and my fellow councillor have raised. I would like to first point out my concerns are not about the process, are about the process and consistent use and interpretation of established policies to ensure a fair balance and well-presented report that members of the Development Committee can feel confident that members of the Development Committee can feel confident they are making a well-informed decision. I'm not against the potential redevelopment of the site or have any issues with the developer. What is the purposes of policy and procedure? Together with policy and procedure, provide a roadmap for day-to-day operations. They ensure compliance and law and regulations, giving guidance to decision-making and streamlining internal processes. If this is the case, then the policy regarding planning in this case appeared to me the weak, pointless, or at the very least, selective to obtain a desired outcome. The purpose of the report surely should be to give a balanced view across providing all the evidence and important facts to be able to make an informed decision, which in this case will have a significant impact on the village of Catfield. I would like to make 3 important points which are of concern. First of all, marketing. 3 months of marketing of such a facility can only be seen as going through the motions. Where and to whom this facility was advertised needs to be questioned. The 3 months indicates the token gesture that intended to show that there was no interest in such a facility so the development could proceed. The purpose of full 12 months is to show clear evidence that such a facility is not in demand. It was marketed at a time when the country was in the midst of a COVID pandemic, and we were all required to follow strict guidance regarding not meeting or travelling. At a time where the care sector was clearly focused on more important matters such as safeguarding patients, staff and families. As you've already been made aware by Dr. Jennifer Harris, this type of facility is in high demand, with patients being sent out of the county to receive specialised support. Patients being sent away from their families and friends due to lack of local facilities. I refer to the article that's already been mentioned regarding the Watton Vibe Hotel being considered for transformation into a mental health facility as further evidence there is a demand. Number two, an area of the planning report does not mention, and the fact at the previous meeting, officers appeared unsure on was the number of jobs that this facility provided and the economic impact the loss of those jobs would have on our local economy. When the facility was closed, there was a total of 47 job roles made redundant. These were specialised staff providing a much needed service in the care sector, jobs for local people, opportunities for young people to access a rewarding profession, an opportunity for apprenticeships and training, therefore providing evidence why a full 12 months of marketing was needed before a decision is made. Affordable housing. This application does not offer any affordable housing that meets the local housing need. The proposed developer offers no affordable housing at a time where our rural areas are in desperate need of this provision. Local people are being priced out of the market. The application has deemed that this development is not viable for affordable housing. A redevelopment of an already established property in good order is not deemed financially viable. I would ask members of the committee to ensure that the finances have been analysed and challenged to confirm that this is the case. If this is not the case, then this is merely setting a precedent for an opt-out of developers in providing affordable housing in the future. Other councils have turned down proposed developments which do not offer affordable housing as part of their application. I feel that this report lacks the balance and robust detail to make an informed decision, and certain elements, particularly marketing of the facility, do not provide clear evidence that this facility was not required. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayes. Before we move into debate, and firstly I'll remind you that we had a very significant and lengthy debate previously dealt with this. So perhaps we could stick to new points that have been raised today rather than rehashing the old arguments. Second, just a question from myself to officers before we move on. Much has been made of the sale, non-sale of the building. My understanding is that this is not NHS owned. It's a private sector facility. And we all know what happens when the private sector is let loose on healthcare. Profit before anything else. So could we, officers, please confirm that this was owned privately and is for sale privately and has nothing to do actually with NHS?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Thank you. Any was it? Other speakers on there?
Yes, the speakers are on. Just if I could ask Officer Barry just to speak a little bit clearly into the microphone.
No problem.
Just repeat.
Yes, I believe that is correct, Chairman.
Thank you. Do officers wish to make any further comment before we go to debate? No? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chairman. So I questioned the loss of jobs last time this was at Development Committee, and all we had was another councillor pulling up a newspaper article saying 37 jobs. But actually to hear there were 47 redundancies is quite remarkable. I know you say it's been financially gone through a viability study, but the lack of affordable really sticks. I mean, last time we did a full council meeting on page 45 of the agenda, we were talking about only 17 affordable homes having built so far. And so the lack of affordable provision doesn't seem right. I agree with the parish councillor saying about parking spaces. Given the rural location, I don't think the parking provision is enough. And moving on to the marketing that was done in 3 months in May 2021, I completely echo Councillor Bayes in saying that I would imagine if you were running a care home at the time, or not a care home, or any health facility, you have just focused on everybody's safety, and you probably weren't thinking about expanding your business at the time. So 3 months, not long enough, and also, and probably more a point, at the wrong time, given the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to have it confirmed that we're looking at a 67% over housing density over our target policy, please, if we can. And then last and definitely not least is the loss of facility. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, Chairman. Yeah, the minimum target within the policy is 30 dwellings per hectare, I believe is the target. That is a minimum threshold. This proposal is about 50 dwellings per hectare.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, minimum or maximum?
It's a minimum.
Just a point for clarification, does the 12-month marketing rule apply to private facilities or only to NHS facilities? I wasn't clear on that.
So seat policy CT3, which is the policy in question, if we're going to turn to it. So it doesn't distinguish between private or public assets. It's whether you're considered to be an important local facility and service. So if you fall within the policy, it's irrespective whether you're in private or public hands, you will need to go through that marketing exercise. Now, we've recognised fully in the report that the applicant hasn't fulfilled the 12 months requirements of the policy, and that's why we've weighed against that in our overall planning balance. But it's for you as a committee to weigh that policy deficiency against all the other elements of the scheme. Just because it conflicts with one policy doesn't mean that the whole scheme is unacceptable in planning terms. So that's where you as a committee have to make that planning balance and that planning judgment. And that's why a recommendation to you is approval based on the suite of other material considerations that we think would weigh in favour of the grant of permission. But ultimately, that judgment call is yours as a committee. You can weigh whatever you consider appropriate to the particular issues in question. We weighed it in a particular way. We think this should be approved, but happy to hear other alternative opinions on it. Thank you. I think it does raise a question on whether, if this facility was to be marketed again for further 12 months, whether there is any reasonable likelihood of a healthcare provider taking it on. You know, I think we have to ask ourselves that question. I mean, I agree there is it does look a little bit suspicious in marketing. It's just 3 months, but then again, 15 providers, according to the report, showed interest. None of them put a tender in.
Mr. Chairman.
You've had your say.
Just a very.
You've had your say. I will come back to you when other members of the actual members of the committee have had their say. Members. Councillor Wellington.
Thank you. I'm going to change the direction of discussion a little bit. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I haven't been involved in the discussions of this previously. But it seems to me there are other areas of concerns as well beyond the discussion that's been about the marketing of the property. And for me, there seems to be not sufficient attention to the flooding situation. And I think I would like some clarity on that a little bit further, please. Obviously, the parish council have brought that up as well, and it's been raised in a number of the previous papers that I have looked at. And also our attention, the attention page to renewable energy, etc. That doesn't seem to be particularly well considered in the development. So could I have some clarification on that? Because obviously, as North Norfolk, we are concerned that we are doing everything that we can to mitigate against climate change, and I have some concerns on that score as well.
Thank you.
So I think in terms of those drainage points, the comments of both the Lead Local Flood Authority and Anglian Water are available online. Anglian Water in particular did consider the surface water drainage strategy and ultimately raised no objection to that strategy, including the aspects which include the overflow, which even connects into their network. The proposal includes additional soakaways, new soakaways and new drainage infrastructure across the site. And that's all been part of the consideration of this application. So it is obviously a difficult point, and Catfield, we are aware, has anecdotally certainly had evidence of those flooding issues. The measures that are put to you as part of this application do include some improvements and some new infrastructure, and on balance, that's considered to be acceptable in accordance with the Anglian Water's opinion on that as well.
Yes, sir. Happy with that, Councillor Williamson?
Well, I think we've all had concerns over previous Anglian Water suggestions that surface water will be contained within sites, etc., and not travelling in. And it seems that we have with the Womack River experiencing issues as well. So I think this is something we have to be really confident on, that if we're passing that is acceptable, and that is a concern to me at the moment, I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor John Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you to officers for their reports, and obviously it's difficult to come to a decision in these cases, and so I thank them for making that decision so we can move this on. Two things. One was it was raised by the parish council that it's legally flawed. I assume that we have a legal view on the applications as they go through. I mean, it's an interesting challenge, which I thought we should clarify, and also a different one. So did you want to do that first, Mr. Chairman, because the other one's a different area? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did read that comment. I mean, I don't think it is legally flawed, because although there are policies within the development plan that are not this development is not compliant with, when you have that situation, you have to look at all the policies in the development plan policies in the round. And on page 31, the officer's report does clarify that in that the development would broadly comply with the requirements of the development plan policies. So you take the sort of holistic approach, balancing up what policies are compliant and what policies the development would not comply with. So I'm satisfied that the judgment given by the officer is one which is accurately advising the committee in this instance.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So if I may, Mr. Chairman, the other question was at CT3. We're obviously in there today. As laid out in the report in the second bullet point, it can be demonstrated there is no reasonable prospect of retention at its current site, and if it is a commercial operation, that a viability test has been demonstrated that use is no longer viable. So we've had a viability test for the affordable housing. Have we had a viability test as a business? Because that requirement is in there, along with it then goes on and says about 12 months.
So we haven't had a viability test for the operation as a business.
Okay, so what we've done is we've had the 3 months advertising, and obviously we've sent it to plenty of people and not had responses, but that's the main thing that we're basing that on. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Fisher.
Just following on from that, could we just qualify when it was last used as a business?
On page 22 of the report, it was closed in February 2021.
Thank you. It's obviously been closed for some time, and in your report, you refer to the fact that it was closed due to CQC or QC, whichever combination of various letters it is, failures and obviously providing an inadequate service. I don't know whether we are able to answer this or whether even we should be answering, but going through my head was this considered unviable to continue as a result of that because the building could not be modified in such a way that appropriate services could be put in place? Or was it merely that having lost their standards that they couldn't continue? Because I can understand that other businesses, similar businesses, would have similar issues if they would not be able to convert the building to appropriate standards. We've had that with some in other local towns where the rooms can't be upgraded and the right sizes and accessible facilities, etc. If that isn't a concern with this, then I think that adds another weight to concerns about the closure of it as a health facility.
I think ultimately some of the specific answers to those questions you've raised would be in fact difficult to answer, as you alluded to. The timeline that's taken place on the site is exactly as has been outlined. It closed in February 2021 and subsequently the decision was made to market it for sale. The report outlines exactly how many hospital providers sort of came forward or not, and exactly how many private developers for other purposes came forward or not. The position we are in and the recommendation before you takes account of that, takes that into consideration and makes the recommendation that you have. But the exact specifics of why we would find difficult to answer.
Okay, well, just to make things slightly more complicated, as planning always tends to be, if you look on page, so the planning balance and conclusion section of the report on page 31. So as part of our assessment, we've obviously flagged to members the fact that we don't have a 5-year land supply as a local planning authority. And therefore the tilted balance, as they call it, is engaged on the planning decision. So we're not starting from a sort of a straight scale, so to speak. That the permission should be granted unless there are sort of demonstrable issues that outweigh the benefits of the scheme. So we have to find those demonstrable harms that would outweigh the approval of the scheme to justify refusing it. And that tilted balance, that's why one of the reasons why we recommended this for approval, because that is quite a significant additional weight, or the scales are tipped in a way that it makes it harder to, you have to have more weight against something to justify refusal. So just to add that to the mix, I know there's a few things members have raised concerns about, but there are other things that would tip the weight back in the other favour. Thank you, Councillor Hankins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this presents quite a difficult balance. On the one hand, we have a dire shortage of housing in the area. On the other hand, there's an even worse shortage of mental health capacity. Reference has been made by the applicant to the viability of the facility. That was based on the support that the facility would have had from government in 21. That may well have changed and may well have changed in the future. So my question is, has any reference, but I understand this is a private facility, but it will be supported in one way or the other by the government grants that are given in order to ascertain its viability. Has any reference at all been made looking into the future to the NHS as to whether they would support the continuation of this facility? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not aware that the NHS have expressed an interest in taking on the facility. So that the facility was marketed for a 3-month period, and as the report suggests, there were some number of people that were sent the details to. I don't know whether the NHS directly were consulted on that. I mean,
3 months is a very short marketing facility, quite honestly, very short. I'm not confident, Mr. Chairman, that this has been explored. Thank you.
First of all, my understanding is that NHS patients are looked after in private facilities, so it is in a way an NHS body that we're looking at. I'm looking at the CQC inspection from 21, and it doesn't seem to have an awful lot on structural issues. So all the information that you've just asked for is in the public domain. So this could be checked over in more detail. Thank you very much.
thank you. You've already really had 2 goes. But you can have one more.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was going to propose I'm against this.
Right, you can't do that. We have to, if we're going to refuse it, procedure is that we first have to not approve it. And then we can take a proposal to refuse, but I would need clear grounds for that refusal.
Thank you,
The
Chairman.
law must certainly go to appeal, of course. Is anybody able to propose the officer recommendation?
So, as I did last time, Mr. Chairman, what I'm happy to do is that clearly the loss of jobs and the loss of facility, nobody would want that, but those jobs have gone and that facility has gone. We've got no guarantee that it would come back, even if it was marketed, something that's been empty for many years. So I think I would have to difficultly, but land on the side of officers, and therefore, so that we can get this debate done, so that people can then make their decisions on that, I'm happy to propose it so that we move the process forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fisher. Okay, we see where it goes. We have a proposer and a seconder, and we have to take a vote, Lauren.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beattie?
For.
Councillor Boyle? Councillor Brown?
Abstain.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett? Councillor Hankins? Councillor Heinrich?
For.
Councillor Holiday? Councillor Neverway? Councillor Patterson?
Against.
Councillor John Toy?
For.
Councillor Kim Toy? Councillor Vickers?
Abstain.
And Councillor Withington?
Against.
So that is 7 votes for, 2 against, and 4 abstentions. The vote is carried.
Thank you. The application is approved. 3 against. We just check that, Lauren?
Yeah.
So that number's right.
That is. So that is 7 for, 3 against, and 4 abstentions.
Thank you. Right, past, we move on to the last decision item on the agenda. A good friend to us. We've reviewed issues on this site many times.
Chairman, are we having a comfort break?
Who was that? Well, we've got 3/4 of an hour to deal with. Do you think that's long enough? Or we can take a break if you wish. I'll take 5 minutes then. Item 9 on your agenda. Annex to C. Marketing. One we're very familiar with. And Olivia, welcome to your first meeting.
you.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. There we go. Yep, so today we're looking at item 9, application PF 240101. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of a dwelling, brackets replacement. If we go to the next slide, this just gives you a little bit of context of where the site is, so you can see the red arrow pointing to the existing dwelling there. This is just to give you a very, very brief explanation of the site's history. So originally 2012, planning permission was sought for the erection of a 2-storey dwelling. It was refused, but then later allowed at an appeal. Works were commenced with that decision, and following some reports from members of the public, enforcement team was notified that some of the works carried out weren't in accordance with the approved plans. So a temporary stop notice was served in 2017 whilst investigations were undertaken. Following this, a detailed document was reported from the council demonstrating the breaches, and an enforcement notice was issued later in 2019. And the applicant then submitted an appeal. Following this appeal, 2 further applications were submitted in an attempt to try and amend the plans. However, they were both refused, and the applicant later appealed both of those applications and the original enforcement notice. An appeal decision was issued last year, dismissing both of the plan and applications and allowing and dismissing part of the enforcement notice. So today we're looking at a brand new full application for a new dwelling on the site. So as you can see on this side, the site is outlined in red. The outlined areas in blue are the annex and the swimming pool and pool house, which were also allowed at the appeal. So it's just the dwelling that we're looking at today. The site lies within the Norfolk Coastal National Landscape, a conservation area, designated countryside, undeveloped coast, and is classified as river valleys within the landscape assessment. The site also sits to the east of Grade 1 listed St Margaret's Church. This is the proposed site plan for the application. So as you can see, it's a 3-storey dwelling, again outlined in red, and it does show the annex and swimming pool on there as well. However, as I say, they have been granted planning permission already. These are the existing elevations of the dwelling, which is currently on site. So you've got all 4 elevations there showing you what's existing. And now if we go to the next one, sorry, this is the existing floor plans as well. So it's a 3-storey, so you can see all of the floor plans on there. So this is the proposed, it's cut off there with the black line, sorry. The north elevation, and you can see on there is a hatched line which outlines the existing dwelling that's on the site at the moment. So it shows you where that would sit as it does at the moment. This shows the demolition plans that have been submitted with the application. So everything hashed in green shows you what is to be demolished. And then on the next slide just shows a photograph of the north elevation looking back from the church. So this is on the green area that we're looking. So proposed east elevation, again, you have an outline there showing you the existing dwelling in comparison to what is now proposed. And again, what sections will be demolished outlined in green. And just a brief look of the east elevation looking westwards of the existing dwelling. South elevation, again, you can see what is in comparison to the existing dwelling and the areas to be demolished. Photo of the existing elevation as well. And then if we go to west elevation and the areas to be demolished, and then just a photograph showing you the existing dwelling as well. we go to the next one, these plans also show areas to be demolished within the floor plan. So here we have the lower floor plan, ground floor plan, and the first floor plan. We go to the next one, please. And then these are the proposed floor plans. So you've got the lower ground and first floor plan with the terraced area shown on this page as well. And then this is a section through the proposed and the existing dwelling. Again, this is a section through the proposed dwelling as well. These are some illustrative drawings that the architect has provided of the proposed dwelling from all elevations, just to give you a better idea of what it would look like sitting within the site. And if we just scroll through these ones, these are just some slides showing photos of the existing dwelling. So we've got views here looking east to the site's entrance. Again, the west elevation showing the vehicular ramp as well to the side of the property and the parking area. To the rear of the house, you have the swimming pool and the pool house, which, as I say, has been granted planning permission already. This is looking down the vehicle ramp, which will be demolished. And a view from the opposite side of the road to the north elevation. Another photo just looking back at the property. Go to the next. And a view from Bridgefoot Lane, which I think was mentioned through the inspector's appeal. Go to the next one. So the key issues of the application: principle of development, design and impact on heritage assets, amenity, landscaping. Highways and parking has been covered within the committee report, although that's not one of the main issues. Biodiversity, demolition and how that will be dealt with, removal of permitted development rights. And overall, the application has been recommended for approval. A balanced assessment has been undertaken, and it is recognised that there is a long history on the site. So overall, considering all matters raised, including the conflict with some of the development plan policies, office consider that there are material considerations that weigh in favour of the proposal and which would justify the granting of planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you for a well presented and well argued report. Go to public speakers. I have no town or parish speaker. I have one objecting speaker, Jane Platt. If you come to the microphone at the end, please. You'll have 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Jane Carter and I've lived on Newgate Green by the church coming up for 25 years, where I have raised my family. With huge sympathy for the applicant's predicament, I object. The Eastern Block Element 4 is massive. Its full depth, north to south, will be revealed by the demolition works. It will be significantly taller, 2 to 3 metres, than the original bungalow and Holly House. It will be taller than it is now. The ground floor, including a new living room extension, is at bedroom height level for others on the green. The first floor looks like a 3rd story from the green, partly due to the unlawful building up of land levels. I find it staggering that the application does not contain site levels and measurements. Professional architects living nearby have submitted their figures and the methodology was approved by a surveyor, but there are none from the applicants. Such data is doable. The builders in breach of HO8 are designed to protect a replacement building from being disproportionately large in height and scale. The comparisons with other modern builds does not compare like for like when we have a Grade 1 listed church and medieval green in a much visited area. HO8 also states that a dwelling should not materially increase the visual impact on surrounding countryside, which this will. This is a jazz hands look at me building. There is nothing wrong with that in the right context, but the appeal inspector said that the current arcade lacked visual subservience. She described it as a distraction and in competition with heritage assets. She stated it affected in a negative way the ability to appreciate and experience the physical glory of the church. I believed identical statements could be made for this proposal. I have many concerns over the agrarian style, i.e. industrial barn homage, but no time for detail. However, the large box on the back of the new gable, east-west, will distract the overall shape, height and bulk in a very ungainly way. I congratulate the applicant on rallying friends and supporters. If this is a popularity contest, please pass. However, 6 objectors live on the green within 100 metres of Arcady. There are 9 houses in total, excluding Arcady. We are not passers-by, but we'll have to look at Arcady all the time, which is why I'm here today. Nobody on Newgate Green wrote in support. I would hope that the planning laws, the local plan, the objections of your landscape officer and conservation officer, the objections of Clyde Parish Council in the teeth of severe pressure on its councillors, and mostly the parameters set by the inspector's report will be considered. She said the site was an area of high significance with unique historical and natural environments. She said that the current Arcady competes for attention and is unduly conspicuous. If this is passed, nothing will change on that front. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you. Mark, return to your seat. We have one supporting speaker, Tim Schofield, agent for the applicants.
Chair and members of the Planning Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. I'm sure that you're aware of the planning history to this project, which has been a long and difficult story. The chapter on the current house ended in May last year with the appeal decision to demolish it. This new chapter started in June last year and has been a process that has been both collaborative and inclusive, and the design before you today is a result of that. Since June, several meetings have taken place with senior planning officers and the conservation officer in order to arrive at this proposal. A series of presentations to the parish council has taken place, and a public consultation event in the village was overwhelmingly positive. Indeed, at present, there are double the number of letters in support registered against the planning file than objections, with most of the support coming from residents in the village. Even though the parish council response is against the tide of positive opinion in the village, and the plans have changed since they provided their response, they do at least acknowledge the applicant's considerable efforts to get this proposal right and to make sure that local opinion has been sought and listened to. Careful consideration and discussion has taken place to ensure that the current enforcement notice will be adhered to. The proposed conditions are drafted such that the existing enforcement notice will remain in full force until the demolition of the parts of the current house has been completed and signed off by council officers. This gives the council considerable protection and the ability to make sure that the development is compliant should this application be granted. Jim Henman, the architect, is from Fakenham and knows the site and the area well. His design has been carefully developed over time, taking into account the appeal inspector's comments and those from planning officers, conservation officers, and just as importantly, the many observations made by members of the public. During this consultation phase, he has steered the evolution of the design to make sure that the end result will be an excellent, cohesive example of modern architecture that is also restrained, again echoed in many of the public comments. Considering this last point, it is very important to note that the national body tasked with the protection of heritage assets, such as Clyde Church, Historic England, have been consulted and have chosen not to comment. The council's experienced conservation and design and landscape officers do not object, and the recommendation is to approve this planning application. This proposal is sustainable in that it recycles as much of the current structure as possible. And if you are minded to agree with your officer's recommendation, it allows a family who are permanent residents of the village to continue to live here, creating a new home in a way that is positive for them and positive for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We go to the local member, Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me thank the planning officer for her excellent and comprehensive report. There are various lenses through which to view this application. One important lens is public opinion. There has been intense interest in this application, not surprising considering the landscape significance of this site opposite one of the finest churches in Norfolk. The majority of respondents to the planning portal support these plans. The design is considered pleasing and the building is found to be sympathetic to its surrounding. It is felt any harm caused by the existing dwelling is remediated. The reuse of materials is thought to be highly sustainable. There are, however, objections around the height of the east block, which for the majority of its length is considerably higher than that of Holly House. There are new concerns about the proposed roof lights and roofing. The proposal is felt to harm the nearby heritage asset, and there is debate as to whether this application complies with the inspector's decision. Another lens to view this application is that inspector's appeal decision from last year, which I think can be considered the most senior opinion at this point in time, stating the fundamental issues of development on this site were mass, land levels, and height and scale relative to other buildings forming that site of the green. What the inspector wanted was a building that harmonized with its surroundings and was respectful of its tranquil landscape setting. Her opinion, as I understand it, was that any application would be a new one, viewed as a replacement for the original bungalow. Her approach was not to compare any proposed building to the existing dwelling, or even that approved in 2014. The inspector made the additional point that the use of trees to provide instant screening in an enhanced landscape scheme has little support in local and national policy. She wrote, new planting should not be used to screen buildings either poorly designed or in sensitive locations. The inspector considered the trade-off between demolition and sustainability, saying that retention of the development would avoid demolition and energy expended in restoration of the site, but that would be a private, not a public benefit. NNDC consultees, Landscape and Conservation and Design, welcome the improvements to the building, but conclude there is residual harm from this revised proposal through mass and scale. Clyde Parish Council, who of all best know and understand the landscape and setting, appreciate the changes which have been made to the design, but the majority of councillors consider the mass of the east block too dominant and overbearing. In conclusion, planning officers think some harm to heritage assets, together with some harm to landscape character, will still result from this proposal, but on balance will be outweighed by moderate public benefits. Members are better placed than most to understand the complexities of balancing all these elements in coming to a decision. In this case, you need to weigh the sincere outpouring of public support with the reservations expressed by the planning inspector that any building here must be of appropriate mass, scale, and height for this most sensitive of locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor John Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having been around for quite a bit of this, for me, there's at this stage, there's just one question, if I may, and that is, this building was originally approved at appeal, which I know was what caused the issues. It was not built as the plans. How does this compare to what was approved originally? Yeah, because I think that's important that we understand that you know, we can't, that was allowed before, therefore. So I'm trying to understand the scale and the mass. I don't know, I'm not being very clear, am I? Not very helpful to officers. I apologise for that. So I need to understand if the scale and massing, how that fits compared to the original approved design that was on appeal.
So you're referring, just for clarification,
Yeah,
you're
thank you.
referring to the appeal relating to the 2012.
The original
the one
application,
that
yeah.
should have been built. But
Yeah, because we turned that down as a committee, but it went to appeal and it was approved. That was an approved plan. Therefore, I'd like to understand how this fits compared to that, not what's currently there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the current design is different to what was what originally went before committee all those years ago. Obviously, those drawings were incorrect anyway, which is why there was the issue of the dwelling being unlawful following the other applications. I don't have those original plans in front of me at the moment.
But from recollection, are we saying that it's around that same original mass? It's no bigger than that original mass? Because that's been the issue with this property. Are we able to sort of broadly quantify it?
What I don't want a committee to do is to misdirect itself to consider the wrong issues. I think what the committee need to consider is, does this building accord with the policies in your plan? If you're starting comparing to something that an inspector has subsequently dismissed and said has to be demolished, I think we're in danger of focusing on perhaps the wrong comparison. We need to sort of make sure that, are we comfortable that this dwelling will sit in the landscape, sit within the heritage assets that it is close to, and does it accord with policy? And we've acknowledged that there are still going to be some heritage harms, still some landscape harms, but on the balance, we've got to weigh things in the round and said, this building is acceptable on balance. Now, yes, the building that is the first appeal, obviously that was where the issues arose, because there was a comparison in height between an adjoining dwelling. So we don't want to sort of go back to there in terms of not understanding the height. We do now have fixed buildings on the site. So you have an annex which has permission, and we have the fixed height of that structure on the site. So we're not sort of now guessing, because there are fixed structures on the site that we can do comparisons to. And I know Olivia has got some information about the heights comparisons, because that's one of the questions was about how tall is that east wing going in comparison to what's there already. So whether Olivia just wants to go through that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take us off somewhere, but it is important that what was approved, albeit was wrong, was approved. Therefore, it's like anything really. If you're building a replacement building, it's not. We know that the one that's there was built incorrectly, for want of a better description. Really, it was built to the plans, but those plans weren't necessarily the right ones. How can I explain this? It was a bungalow, I think, originally, wasn't it? And then, the inspector thought it was going to be a particular size, and he thought that was acceptable in that original appeal. So therefore, I need to understand, is it still within that acceptable limits that the inspector thought from the plans that were presented to him? Because if I was to sit here and say, I think it's too big, then it may not be compared to that original one, and therefore it would go to appeal and we would lose again. So that's the reason for my question. I'm not looking to go back through all that history. I just need to understand. I'm trying to look for me to understand what is the scale of this building compared to what the inspector thought was going to be there originally.
Let's come back.
Yeah.
I mean, context is important, but what we don't have is a fallback in this case. So there isn't a fallback for the applicant to say, well, if you don't give me permission for this, I can do X, because X is no longer permitted and has to be demolished by later this year. So we don't have a direct comparative fallback. But what we do have is the buildings that are on site, and we do have measurements of the proposed buildings that are being proposed. So we can do those sort of assessments compared to what's on the ground.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave it there. It was just something that I wondered where we were with that. But thank you. Thank you for making the effort to answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to pitch in and agree with Mr. Lyons. So apologies if this is slightly repetitive, but the allowed scheme was allowed 10 years ago. All the drawings are on our website. It was for, my words now, a substantial flat roofed 2-story with lower ground floor development. Personal view, the critical issue for you today is the building as proposed acceptable on this site or not, almost ignoring the history in my view. It's a straight, is that building acceptable or not? Not the one that might have been allowed 10 years ago, not the one that might have been there before, not the one that might be there now. Is the current building as proposed acceptable? Personal view, it is, but it is an unbalanced call. Personal view, there are two major differences. I'm now going to contradict what I've just said. between the current proposal and what is there now and what was approved in the appeal. Number one is a reduced scale of the, I'm going to put this in rights and lefts in a second, the right-hand bit as you look at it from the village green, as was shown in a couple of the photographs Ms Luckhurst showed earlier, which personally is the bit that dominates the views from Clyde. So that is significantly reduced. The second element that is different is the introduction of a pitched roof component to the scheme rather than the, let's just call it angular flat roof bit that dominates currently. If I was then being slightly flippant, introducing a pitched roof to a flat roofed building simplistically tends to result in the eaves being lower and the ridge being higher as a consequence of introducing the changed form. So the points that have been made about the eastern block, so that's the element on the left-hand side as you drive past if you're going from Cly up the road towards Holt, that will be higher at ridge line than the current building. Personally, and I take the point others have made about screening, personally, my view is that that is screened to a sufficient degree by the established landscaping there, and that pitched roofs are more of the norm in Cly than the angular roof you've got there. So the north elevation, if we get to one of those, now I'm paying attention to the fact there are slides being shown. So broadly, the right-hand bit, as you see it there, disappears, but the left-hand bit is built up. But just to go back to what I said to start with, I would agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Lyon. The key bit is the proposal as put forward today acceptable or not? Personally, the history is interesting, but isn't the overriding consideration for you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, thank you for getting to that and bearing with me. But you spoke about the reduced scale and things, and that was kind of what I was trying to get to, because that had been the issue with it, as we can see where it sits in that picture there. So thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right, I have a long list of members wishing to speak. I'll start with Councillor Kimtoy.
Hello, thank you for clarifying all that. It's much the same as I was trying or going to try and say. It must be very hard and a challenge for members that have seen the whole history of this ongoing application. But I think it's really important that we do look at this as completely with fresh eyes. If this came to us today completely without all the history that it's had before, and yes, I have to admit, yes, I have seen what it looked like before, and what it looks like now, and I think there's a big improvement there. It's a lot softer on the eye. So, but of course, it's just been explained with a lot more words and no, it's fine, and a lot clearer, but much the same as I was going to say. So thank you very much.
Councillor Withington.
Could we, I was going to ask if we could go back to that view of the eastern side, the bit that's causing the most concern. I think that's probably the most helpful one, isn't it? That's south, isn't it?
So was it the east elevation?
Yeah, so understanding with that eastern block, what the height, the actual height levels are on that.
So the overall height of the east elevation is 7.5 meters in height, and then you have the northern section, which is stepped down by around 450 mil. So, oh, sorry, if you just go to the east again. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that there is a section that's stepped down slightly. So as I say, overall height 7.5, and then you step down by about 450 mil, that northern section, and it's 5.7 meters to the eaves as well.
Okay. So that is quite a significant reduction, isn't it?
So the ridge has actually been increased compared to what's already there at the moment.
Okay.
But that is as a result of introducing the pitched roof as opposed to it being flat.
Okay.
So that gives you a good idea of you can see, obviously at the moment it's completely flat roof. You're having some areas demolished, but then that will be replaced with the pitched roof on the eastern elevation.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments, councillor? Thank you. Councillor Vickers?
I'm sorry, Chairman, if I'm going to take us a step back, I do appreciate the guidance from the planning officers, but I fully support what Councillor John Toy raised, and if he hadn't raised it, I would. I think it's important where there has been history to see the original approved plans, and I would have liked to have seen those in the document, particularly when there's a history of some let's put it politely, flexibility with the original planning officers. Wonderful. Thank you.
I understand that the original drawings that were approved were incorrect anyway. No, I think as officers said, we do need to look at what is in front of us, which is a straightforward replacement dwelling on the existing site. We can't look at the history. You know, bungalow that was there is long gone. We can't change the land level sensibly. We have an application in front of us that officers are recommending. How we all feel about it, up to us and our reading of the report. But I'm not sure anything is gained by continuing to go back to the history. We need to look at what is in front of us now. Is that acceptable? And I'd ask you to keep that in mind, please. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with what you say. However, it is very difficult to forget the history of this. I often come back from the Blakeney direction, and the right-hand bit, as it's referred to, I think the north elevation, is what you see from the green. You will now, as you approach it, see sky rather than the strange edifice that we've been getting used to over the last year or two. I think on balance, this is possibly the best we're going to get. And so I think I would happily propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it does seem all about scale and mass in its location. Can we just, have we got, did you say you've got the heights against, say, the annex and is it Holly House next door? Have we got the new ridge height versus, or proposed ridge height? Well, I can't read that quick.
Sorry, that one, there we go. So this is a scaled drawing showing a section through the site. So you can see Holly House on the right hand side. Yeah, just where the mouse
But we
is.
haven't got in meters how much higher the proposed.
I haven't got the measurement, no, but as I say, the drawing is to scale, so it can be measured, but I haven't got that measurement in front of me at the moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, we have a proposer. Do I have a seconder? Councillor John Toy.
Yeah, I'm listed to debate and I'm happy to second. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there's no further discussion. Well, we'll go to the vote, please, on.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beatty?
For.
Councillor Boyle? Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett? Councillor Hankins? Councillor Heinrich?
For.
Councillor Holiday? Councillor Neverway? Councillor Patterson,
Four.
Councillor John Toy,
That's four.
Councillor Kim Toy,
For,
Councillor Vickers,
with some reservation for.
and Councillor Withington.
Four.
So that is 12 votes for, 1 against and 1 abstention. The vote is carried.
The application is approved, subject to conditions. Thank you. Right, we move on then to agenda item 10, Development Manager Performance Updates. Line. The end of the. Just wait for the room to clear slide. Right, okay, so bottom of page 99 of your agenda. So we've got the performance stats for the month of February. So we have 3 major decisions issued in that period, all within time, and 78 non-major decisions with 96% within the time. So there are 3 applications that went out of time. So our 24-month cumulative sort of performance for majors is 100%, and for non-majors is 95%. In terms of the quality decision, so this is the number of appeals that are allowed as a measure against decisions issued. So for majors, we're on the 0%, so none have been allowed for majors, and for non-majors, we're at 0.51%. So that is a slight increase in the number of cases that have been allowed at appeal. We had about 4 or 5 last month that were allowed, but it's well within the government's sort of target of 10% and well within our own council target of 5%. So it's nothing to worry about unduly at the moment. We're still getting a number of applications coming in, so slightly down on the previous month, but we are still getting applications coming in. Biodiversity net gain for small sites started this week, so that probably will have a bit of an impact in the short term in terms of applications coming in, but yeah, we're still churning through the cases, so happy to take any questions on that, Chair.
Well, I was just going to add slightly. So following discussions with the chair of the committee, we will be doing a bit of work to review appeal outcomes over the last 12 months, both in terms of pure stats and in terms of what lessons we might learn from those decisions. And the intention is to bring a kind of year-end report to you, probably not at the next meeting, but hopefully the one after, that will provide a bit of a look back at 23-24 performance generally, but appeals in particular.
Okay, Mr. Patterson, you got a question, I believe?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that, Jeff. We've got these stats here, but they include extension of times, don't they? Can we actually have weeks it takes to get planning permissions through on here, or applications, how long they're handled, as opposed to percentages? Because as soon as you agree for an EOT, obviously you fall in the stats here. It would be interesting just to see how long on average the time it takes.
So a couple of points to that very fair question. So at the moment, we're reporting to you what the government asks us to report to them. And that's logical. Equally, it can mask things, and the government have twigged, shouldn't say that on live feed, should I, have twigged that it might not be the best suite of indicators, and are actually out for consultation at the moment on some issues in the area you're referring to. So should we, for sake of argument, report on the number of applications that are determined within the 8-week, 13-week and 16-week time periods, ignoring extensions of time? So I suspect we'll end up with a different suite we have to report to government. your one sort of average time to a decision is equally a perfectly valid suggestion. And we are looking at, as I think I've mentioned before, a new suite of indicators that probably give a more holistic impression of how the service is doing, to be monitored during 24-25. And I would hope to include a draft set for you to give some comments on over the next couple of months. But one we are looking at is that kind of average time to decision, because I think it is relevant, because it shows a general feel for the standard of the service. Clearly you iron out the one that might be 1,000 days doesn't have a lot of weight to the 35 that might be 35 days, say, but it is a useful indicator. If any councillors have any bright ideas and things you think we should be monitoring, by all means email them to me. I don't particularly want to hold the discussion on it in public forum, but we would appreciate your views as to what you think we should be monitoring.
Thank you.
Good. Yes, Roger. Just in terms of context, so there's 328 authorities across the country. And currently for our majors performance, we are 26 out of 328 across the country. And we can't get any higher because we're already at 100%. So in terms of non-majors, we are 55th out of 328, and that figure will rise. So this is the performance across Jan 2022 to December 2023, so a 2-year period. So we're right up there in terms of our performance, but we recognise that the rules of the game that the government have set, the government are wanting to change those rules, and they will take out the extension of times from those figures so that we'll then have a different set of rules to apply to when we may be in a different position in that league table compared to others. I don't think we're certainly not one of the highest authorities reliant on extensions of time. The government produced a list of the top 50 and we were nowhere near that list. But that doesn't say that we don't rely on EOTs, because we do. For most of our major applications, they're not determined within 13 weeks because they usually require a Section 106 obligation that takes them beyond that time frame. So obviously we have to work within the rules, but it's for many it's a challenge of if we strip out extension of time, what's the impact of that? And one of the impact that the government will start to realise is that if you change the rules, you might end up with decisions being made as submitted rather than applicants having the opportunity to negotiate and improve a scheme. So you may end up with more appeals going to the planning inspectorate because we determine as submitted rather than having that negotiation. So actually, rather than an applicant getting a decision within, say, I don't know, 12 weeks on an 8-week determination period, they might get that within a year because they've had to wait for the planning inspectorate to determine their appeal. So there are pros and cons to changing the rules on performance, but obviously we work within the rules and we do the best we can to deliver a good service for our residents. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think what we need to remember as regards extensions of time at the moment is that the overall picture is somewhat skewed by nutrient neutrality and the fact that we're having to agree quite lengthy extensions of time on nutrient neutrality cases. So our statistics at the moment would be different to those authorities that are not afflicted by nutrient neutrality, which is probably 2/3 of those 328 authorities that Mr. Lyons mentioned. So we just need to be mindful of that. But I certainly have in the past, like Councillor Patterson, suggested that we do have some statistics for extensions of time in our monthly reporting at some point when we know exactly what the government are likely to require, but whether or not they require those, we should really have them before the committee, I think.
I'll just nervously use an example to demonstrate how this might actually impact on the committee. So the nervous is I'm going to go back to Arcady, so we're not reopening that discussion, but just to paint the picture of that. They make an application, it's for a single house, we get 8 weeks to determine it. I decide it's going to come to committee because that was kind of fairly obvious, bearing in mind the history of it. You meet every 4 weeks, that might be anywhere between week 5 and week 8. The parish council in question gave their comments in time. but equally had some comments, as did conservation officers and the like, that the applicant thought it would be a good idea to try and address in full or in part and improve the scheme. If we'd have been measured on pure 8-week statistics, Mr. Lyon and I might have thought, for need to meet government target perspective, that the scheme should have come to this committee as it was submitted. I'm not going to tell you what we might have recommended because we never got to that point, but it would have been not as good a scheme as the one you've just approved. So was it worth waiting 4 weeks or for another cycle, which is the applicant was happy to do, but that required an extension of time. In a different scenario, I probably would have forced that to come here 4 weeks ago, and it wouldn't have been as good an application, and it would have made your decision a smidgen more difficult in my view. So we've got a whole load of things to balance up here, and some of which is about meeting statistics, some of which is what's in the applicant's mind, and some of which is what's in that sort of mythical thing that's difficult to quantify of sort of broader public interest, because everybody has a different view as to what public interest is depending on where they sit in the position. So but that was one where we actually got it through reasonably quickly, but it still went over time for perfectly valid reasons in my view, and ended up with a better scheme as a consequence.
Councillor Withington.
Thank you. I think you raise a very valid point there, Officer Williams. But I wonder whether it would be helpful at the moment for us in terms of being able to demonstrate that we're going through that process and the improvements, that if we had those figures, that, there's, as we have in our 106, there's a simple notes column at the end that says resulted in, improved amended plans or improved conditions, so that we see as a whole that we're not just sitting on an application, and that a process has been gone through that has led to an improved position for everybody involved. Because I think we can then report back to anybody who's questioning and saying, why haven't you? Well, we've had 24 applications have come through with improved applications as a result of those timed extensions. And I think being able to present that gives us, as members, it gives you an informed picture of what's actually happening in reality. And, and I wouldn't wanted you to have bought Arcady 4 weeks ago. I would want it to come through the best it can be.
Thank you. S106.
We've just about to circulate land on Austin Road, Walcott, for signature, so that will come off the list next time. That's going to complete. And land off Overstrand Road, Cromer. We're just outstanding on 2 points now, so that should complete within the month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just ask the officer what the recession clause requested by the applicant is on? Sorry, I must on you.
That's dropped now. That's no longer going. That's no longer relevant.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions on that then? Okay, item 11, appeals. It's been a busy month down in Bristol by the looks of the appeal decisions that we've had in. So we've had quite a lot of decisions made, but we'll start with the new appeals. So we've got 3 new appeals that you'll see on page 103. I'm hoping members will have spotted that we have now added the appeal start date into your list of, so you can see when it first came in. So hopefully that will be of use. If there are any more bits of information that you feel you'd benefit from seeing in the report, please let us know, and we can certainly add those or see if we can add those onto the list. Yeah, so happy to take any questions. So we have had a number of appeals decided this month. So we've had 7 decisions, and I think about 6 out of 7 have been dismissed. So not too shabby. Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 107, enforcement notice 230124, good old Wells pizza van that I've mentioned, been mentioning now for some time. I was sure that last time we reported on this, both those appeals had been dismissed, and this seems to have come and reared its ugly head again. I hope I'm right in what I'm thinking, and that's a mistake. Because my next question was, the pizza van is still there. If it was, the appeal was dismissed, how long have they got to move the damn thing?
There was 2 enforcement notices issued because one I think was near the Butlins, I think, and this one is near the quay. They moved the pizza van, and I think that we've only had a decision or determination on one of those 2. They're still awaiting so far as I'm aware, the one on the quay is still awaited determination.
My memory is that the last time it did say appeal dismissed, but I may be wrong in that. I would have to look. I've probably got the previous one. I shall look. I shall be very disappointed.
One was, but I'm not sure we've got the one at the quay. Yeah.
Any further questions on the appeals section? Okay, in which case we are all done for today. The meeting closed at 11:14.